So a thought I had was to make a video or a couple videos where I start talking about some stuff closer to the beginning of my mental trauma, mostly to, I don't know, illustrate how and why my particular person or situation is more than just a couple dings and bumps on the head. That is in and of itself just kind of a me needing to prove myself to the world kind of issue. Because traumatic brain injuries, as well as anxiety and mental illness in general, I think a lot of us that suffer from either or both of those troubles can often feel not ignored, but like those particular troubles aren't seen. You don't walk around with a broken arm, you don't walk around with a broken leg or a permanent limp or a permanent disability that people can see. And so when you have an outward reaction, when you have an outward seeable breakdown or break of some kind, it's like it comes from nowhere. It's like you're fighting inside to keep everything from breaking. And then when it does break, you break, and suddenly you're broken. And everybody that sees you broken doesn't understand how that happened because they never saw the cracking that you were struggling to keep from happening. It's just not as visual, not as perceivable. So I wanted to perhaps begin my story at the beginning, and describe some of those situations and happenstances, some of those not necessarily just mother stories, because a lot of them will be mother stories, but describe some of what it is to have become what I am. The process is more than just, yeah, I've been hit on the head. Yeah, I've suffered this and that. Because it's a conglomeration of all of those things. It's because this has happened. It's because this is how I started. It's because then this happened. It's because all of these things have happened. And then I spent 10 years dissecting all of those things, understanding how they all come together. And now, when all of these things happen, and then I'm triggered, I say full stop and evaluate and then make a decision. But it took 30 years of my life to break all of this bullshit down. To the point that for the last 3 years, I can actually do any of that. Say full stop, evaluate, make a decision. And even now, I can't do that in 100% of situations. You do that in like 50% of situations. The other 50%, I'm just like, wah! And then I'm like, decisions? Fuck decisions. I'm just gonna do shit. And everything goes to hell. So, don't do it right every time. But again, starting at the beginning. Here we go. So I'm trying to reach back for like my first perceivable memory. And I can't like precisely really grab it, but something I can really tangibly kind of lock onto that I know that there's like no pictures of, because it's a toss up between a couple things, but like one is this cat that I had, and I used to like to ride this cat, but there's a picture of me riding this cat. Poor cat. But there's literally no picture of this happening. On old corded dial telephones, there used to be these things, if you're watching this and you don't believe that because you've never experienced this, like push button dial telephones. And on these dial telephones used to be the various phone numbers for EMS, non-emergency. And that included the fire department, the police department, and I don't know, maybe the local hospital. And they're all set on this big, I mean like this big, bigger than my face, box, dialable, little corded telephone. And I remember the look of this thing, and I was maybe 3 years old. It was before we moved to a certain house where I knew what the ages, so I was like maybe 3 years old. And I'm playing with this fucking thing, and I'm pushing buttons. And I pushed the fire department's phone speed dial thing like a couple times. And of course, I'm a kid. I don't know what's going on the other side of the line. And there's no response. So what do they do? But they respond. And all of a sudden there's fire trucks in front of my house. And so like this like decisive memory in my brain is of 3 years old is my mother devastatedly embarrassed, trying not to scream at me in front of the fire department chief who's trying to tell her it's okay, as they're explaining to me, the 3-year-old, never to do that again. But like I've known this story, but what sparks this memory and like links me to this memory empathically and like draws it from my emotional state is the fact that I'm a mother now and I have a 3-year-old. And if I were to encounter this situation, I know how mortified I would be. But I can imagine an EMS person like needing to impart to this 3-year-old, if there's a fire, you need to do this. It's okay to press this button. You need to not be terrified to press this button. And you need to not be terrified of your mother. So it's okay. But like, I, child, was terrified of my mother. And it was because she was so mortified of what I had done. And that's why this memory is imprinted on me. Because I knew how mortified she was and how angry she was at me and how much she was gonna like yell, curse, scream once that guy was gone. And how much I would never want to do that to my own daughter. How much I would not do that to her. I would not yell, curse, scream at her for making a mistake of pressing a button that was so bright and shiny when I had left her with it. That's my fault. It's not her fault for not understanding what I had given her. But yet I was 3 and I was terrified of what my mom had done. And that's literally the first memory I can grab that's not photographed. And it vies with this happy, giggly memory about riding a cat. It's photographed, but it's the same time frame. I also got yelled at for riding the cat. I mean, sure, should have got yelled at for riding the cat. Don't ride a cat. Not nice to the cat. The next memories I have linked together a little bit. My mom, we used to find her on the couch in the mornings on a lot of weekends. And she would pass out on the couch and at night watching TV. And she'd wake up and there'd always be like this kid cup of wine on the couch next to her. And then my dad and I would go to McDonald's for breakfast. But the McDonald's trips would be cut out during tax season because my dad was a tax man. And then they got less frequent when mom and dad's relationship got rockier. And I came to find out as an adult that's because he was having an affair. So that's kind of a wishy-washy memory that kind of comes with stories of going out to McDonald's with my dad. But the McDonald's thing was a really happy memory in general, going out with him. So the next really definitive memory that comes without a camera photographic evidence is me really proudly sneaking out of the house to walk myself down to the pool. Because again, these memories come with the defiance of like, you've said no so many times. And mom said no again. No, we're not going swimming. But hey, you promised we were gonna go, and god damn it, you've said no so many times, and I know how to do it. I know where the key is. I know how to get myself in my swimsuit, and I know how to blow up my floaty. And it's my floaty that keeps me safe. So I did all of these things, and god damn it, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I did it. So I got all these things, and I proudly, very proudly, walked myself down to the swimming pool, and I remember this very vividly. And I unlocked the gate, and again, mom had said no, but she'd said no because she was just passed out on the couch. She didn't want to get up. She's too tired, too drunk, hungover. And I remember the little cup was there, the kitty cup of wine. But the thing I remember the most definitively was how proud I was of getting myself up and able to do this thing. And I was very young. I was under 5. Again, it was between 5 and 6. I was in kindergarten. And I know because of what house I was in. So I walked myself down to the pool in my floaty. I unlocked the door with the pool key. And thank God one person was there, because I walked myself right over the deep end. Yeah, I'm gonna swim. No lifeguard. And I jump on in, and I go right through that little ring floaty, and I sink down to the fucking bottom. And that one man that was there jumped in and saved my life and pulled me up. And, good God, why are you here alone, drowning yourself in this pool? What the fuck? And he walked me back home. I got yelled at by my mortified mother. I don't remember if she was looking for me or not. That's honest truth, though. You'd have to ask her. But I walked I did all of those things. Remember fairly vividly. Yeah. So this isn't a memory I have. This is just a story that is often told. My mom, on the way to the hospital, managed to ruin a car. She had been driving the same car with the oil light on. And on the way to the hospital, when they got the news that I had been born, she ran that car with the oil light into the ground. It broke down on the way to the hospital. Just shit the bed. And so 2 days after they brought me home, we went car shopping. Yay! Perfect place to bring a newborn. Just a fun way to begin life. So that brings me to the point that I was adopted. And adoption, though a wonderful thing, is a difficult way for a being to start life. If you think about it, a child starts with a biological connection to someone. They've been listening to the heartbeat of someone. They've been listening to the voice of someone. They've been developing a connection, and suddenly they are literally ripped apart from that being that they've developed a connection with and put into the arms of another person. And despite the good intentions of those beings that are now trying to begin the life with that infant and take the place of that being that created the infant doesn't understand. It's just suddenly something new, and it's something's being asked of the infant that they might not understand. So, my daughter does not understand what I'm doing right now. She thinks I'm talking to the plants. So what was being asked of me as an infant required an amount of understanding that my mother did not have. She didn't even understand her own car enough to change its oil, let alone understand an infant enough to empathize with that infant's understanding with its environment. So I can only imagine that I was a difficult baby because my baby was difficult. And she's not someone that empathizes well. So it was probably a difficult connection to begin with. It was probably strained. Yes. I am being nice to the plants. I love you too. So everyone is really interested in what I'm doing. If you can see cat number 1. Where's my finger? There it is. Cat number 1 is right behind my finger. Yep, right there. Cat number 2 is here. And then daughter is over there. So, no privacy in this house. And, oh, we're coughing up a hairball? I don't know. My husband is asleep in the garage, which is where I was recording before. That's why I'm out here. I have to hide in this corner with my plants because right now they're in the shade and the light affects my eyes. That's why I hide in the garage so much. That's why the recordings often happen in there. Anyways, I was talking about my mother misunderstanding the adopted baby. I imagine that that's a problem that a lot of adopted families face. So I don't want to just claim that the adoption trauma process was an isolated incident for us. It probably isn't. But my mother really has... You have something for me? Oh, wow. That's cool. It can't have been an isolated incident for us. I imagine a lot of families face it. But I would also say that it can't have been an easy process based on the fact that my mother is not, continues to be not empathetic. My father is kind of emotionally stunted due to some own traumas in his past, I think, and struggles to emote or communicate his emotions. Where they were at in their relationship was probably not the best time to introduce a baby, but they tried, and their hearts were hopefully in the right place. I can't judge. I don't know. But my mother was an alcoholic, true alcoholic at the time. And that definitely did not help with that trauma and the trauma faced by both of us. And she did not face those demons. And as I grew, those demons were inflicted on me. Like I said with the pool story, those that neglect was an issue. When I grew old enough, I love you too. When I grew old enough to talk back, there was a large degree of verbal abuse. I'm trying to remember a specific memory. A really good example is that she reminded me of my weight constantly from an early age. I was called a fat baby. I was called a chubby child. I knew I was fat. I knew I was the fat kid. I can't tell you when the first time I knew that was. I just knew it. And I know that it was my mother that told me so. Period. I love you too. And I will never tell my child that she is anything but beautiful. She is beautiful. She is the light of my life. She just is. Hey, you need to stay inside. No, thank you. I need to go prevent an escape. But I can just tell you that I always knew I was less than perfect because of her. I love you too. Please close the door. And I will never let my child feel anything but perfect. And if that doesn't demonstrate verbal abuse or mental abuse, I don't know what does. I've prevented escape. I did check on Daddy. Yes, I did. I'm going to go check on him again in a minute. In conclusion, I'm going to wrap up this going back moment and say that this is a safe space. And please, if you have comments or questions, feel free and leave them. But remember, questions are better than criticisms. You got to say what you got to say. But just remember, ask yourself why you got to criticize and maybe ask a question first. Thanks.